Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 151. Today is Thursday, August 8th. I'm Van Burnett, joined as always by Steve Giswelli. We got a fun show tonight, folks. Thank you for joining us in kind of the dog days a little bit. And, of course, playoffs are around the corner. We actually, a programming note will be out next week. Both of us, Steve and I, plan our vacations together, believe it or not. But we will be out next week and coming back with some crunch time stuff. Tonight, we are taking a step back, having a little bit of fun, looking at some of the top names in fantasy baseball and predicting the first round of 2025. Steve, it's a fantastic idea for a show topic. Some of these names we don't get to talk about too often. And the fun twist here is that neither one of us knows who is on the other one's list or in what order. So it's going to be fun kind of peeling the onion back a little bit, starting with the number one overall pick, making our way back to pick 12. But very much looking forward to getting into it, Steve. Still in the race for the home league. I'm pretty much locked in third, ready for playoffs. Can't come soon enough. A couple weeks out, and yeah, it's going well. But I know we both got our trips coming up. That'll be fun too. So I'm excited for a fun show because work is always rough leading up to PTO. So this is a nice little exhale show topic. But how's it going, man?
Yeah, I find it hilarious that just the way that our lives have intertwined and become the same, that we're off the same week too, from our in real life jobs. Yeah, it's going good. Excited for a nice little break here. Work's been crazy too for me. So very much looking forward to next week. But yeah, like fantasy wise, still in it. My industry leagues and FBC has taken. It seems to always take a hit in August for me, and then I always tell myself I want to finish better in the second half than I do in the first, and it's sort of a war of attrition. And maybe I'm just not as good as managing like weekly move leagues later on in the season and preparing for dealing with injuries. Like, one of the show topics we were bouncing around, this idea for like all the injured guys, like in daily leagues, like you could move on pretty easily and just drop and swap out a guy. But in a weekly league, like if you get a guy that's hurt on a Monday, like, and it's someone that may be out for 2 to 3 weeks this year, like you can't afford to lose. You basically need to build up a lot of equity, I feel like, in the first half of the season. It makes it even more important for those industry leagues. But yeah, home league in a battle for still in contention for a long shot to win the overall for the regular season, but looking for a top two finish to finish in the second round bye, playing the fourth place team. I'm in third currently right now, so it's a battle. And then playoffs coming up. Like I think we're on the same sort of schedule, right? Like most head-to-head leagues, I think, start playoffs either the last week of August or first week of September. So we're right onto it. We're the last week of August. I think we got 2 more regular seasons at weeks after this one. So it's an exciting time, but glad that we're taking a break to look forward to next year for the first time. And it's also something that we haven't really done. I remember last year around this time, Pull Hitter podcast put out they did a first 7-round mock for 2024 in August of 2023. It was really cool to look at, and I think doing stuff like that without being influenced by ADP and being involved in season, right? Like we see how much ADP changes from like October to March. Like think about how much it may change from now to March of 2025. But I also think it's nice to not have an influence of, okay, these are where these guys are expected to go. So sort of do this on our own will be interesting to look back at too when we get to full prep season. So a nice little break. How many times can we look at under rostered players or last 30 players days? Like it's a nice change in my opinion to break up some similar theme topics here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we've done it a few different ways. I do remember at the tail end of last season, we had a discussion because I held on to it about the first round for 2024 because I remember we were talking about Otani and Acuna being like the 1-2, and then Otani slid all the way down to like the back end of the first round. And I think that is almost a little bit of a lesson as well, that we've often found, Steve, that some of our first gut reactions are worthwhile of holding, because you can fall victim to the group think. And of
Yeah.
course, baseball to be played, right?
And also, in weekly NFBC leagues, he's util only, and there's a lot of appeal in him being a pitcher too. He is a two-way player. Like, you could slot him as a pitcher. I think that plays a factor. I think for this purpose, this exercise, maybe on that, we could set a little ground rules here. I have it as Otani as one person. You could put him in either slot. He would be util only, I guess, basically in every league too, unless end of the year he gets some outfield eligibility, which there is some rumblings about that, but I digress. And we did 12 guys, so like a 12-team league, and standard head-to-head 5x5 categories, I think is the way I leaned here.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yep. Same.
Cool.
So without further ado, I mean, what do we say? 1, 2, 3, go. We got to do our top overall pick, Steve. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we both got the same guy.
I think so. It's a nice segue for me. I have Otani number 1.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I got Otani at 2.
Okay.
Which go ahead. You start the discussion then.
He's going to pitch again next year, right? Like, and if it's a Fantrax league, if it's an NFBC league, like,
I see what you're saying. So you
like,
said you've got
Otani,
him as one player. I thought you meant one side of the ball.
Okay. So, I mean, if you have him at 2, it's sort of splitting hairs here, but I think he's just criminally underrated every single year. Like, he should have been, this. I understand with Witt and even Julio.
Corbin,
I think Otani
Carroll,
should have been taken like 4th at most in leagues. And sure, like, there was the whole. And honestly, it's why I passed on him in my home league. I wish I didn't. But like, I drafted the day the news broke about the gambling scandal, right? But like, he's got 34 homers, 32 steals, a 306 average. Has a really, really good chance of winning the Triple Crown, and he's going to pitch next year too. It's the strikeout rate has now become like manageable from when it was like. It's become good, like, or like average from when it was like just manageable, close to 30%. There's no question for me that if I had the first overall pick, and it's a league where you could slot him in, pitcher or hitter, like in a daily league in Fantrax, like that is, where you could just throw him in for his starts, no question, clear cut number 1. NFBC 2, I think he's number 1 for me. Like, the only argument, I guess, was that he didn't steal that much, relative to like Witt or Ellie, but he's got 32 this year. Like, come on. Like, what else does he have to do? He is, in my mind, the number 1 player.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think the only question is, if he was hitter only, would he still be number 1? Because that's how I put him as number 2.
I think I would. I think I would take him number 1 if he was hitter only.
And
I think the util only penalty goes way too far, and it's just not. It's not. It's weighted too heavily. Yeah.
Who
cares if he spills up util only? He's the best player.
Right. Exactly. There's not another player you'd want there, and the opportunity cost of whatever your hypothetical is means nothing when Otani is on pace for pretty much 40-35, second year in a row hitting 300. And in terms of the counting stats, it looks great with the RBIs. The runs are rock solid as well.
He might get 40-40. He's at 32 already.
Yeah, he could.
All the projections have him for 8 more steals.
He's attempted 36 steals, which is also what he attempted in 2021. And this is the most he's attempted since then.
Caught less, though, obviously, with the new rules. So
yeah, caught less with the new rules. And this has all been in 111 games. So yeah, I think you're not going to find an argument for me here, Steve. I guess I wonder if him getting back to pitching, do you think there's any sort of drawback? Because I think one thing we were excited about was Ohtani fully focusing on
Yeah,
hitting, and
maybe,
he'll try to
maybe.
bring more of an impact. Like maybe he won't be as aggressive on the base paths, for instance.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he also pitched for 2/3 of the year last year, and he had a 180 WRC plus last year.
Right.
His WRC plus this year is 180. So relative to the league, he is the exact same hitter, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe there's some, a little bit less steals, but I mean, he also still had 20 last year. He's fully in the leadoff spot now, which I think helps his steals. Sure, maybe some RBIs and runs suffer, but I don't think that matters when it's a lineup like the Dodgers, right? Like Trey Turner, when he lit off there, had like 100 RBI season. Like, I know you need a little on base luck as far as who's in front of you and the ability to drive in guys, but he drove in 195 runs, 100 runs with the Angels. Like it's better to situation batting leadoff on the Dodgers than it was with the RBI situation on the Angels, right? Even for the limited time that Mike Trout was healthy when he played with him. I think there's something to be said that like preparing to pitch has to hurt somewhat, like as far as like soft analysis and like being a hitter, right? So I don't know, maybe there's that, but I mean he's also recovering and like he's rehabbing from Tommy John or whatever the internal brace arm procedure was this year, so it's not like he's not doing anything else.
Yeah, that's fair.
And he's proven he's been a first overall caliber hitter while also pitching too in the past, so I'm not too concerned about it.
I mean, just a closing thought here is in 2023, last year, Ohtani had 100th percentile barrel rate at 19.6. It got better this year.
Yeah, it's a 20.8.
He went from 100th percentile
it's
to
the best hard hit rate of his career. It's 59.3% hard hit rate. Best max EV of his career. Maybe this is
the watermark.
Maybe this is this got to be the peak, right? Like what's better than this? I don't know.
I think it's just, it's what we've said in the past for like a Xander Bogaerts, but it's just times a million that like Ohtani looks like a different amazing every season. You know what I mean? Like last year is 44 home runs. This year he's, just gliding into this 30-30, maybe 40-40 season. So it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if
there's something new every year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't seen Ohtani hit 330 yet, and I guarantee you we will before he's done. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it's a new thing every time. So yeah, we're here for the ride. Well, my number one, Steve, which is probably your number two, I'm guessing, is Bobby Witt Jr. True
that
or
is
false?
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. That is
so Witt, I think you're just getting kind of a different look than Ohtani. For one, 6 years his junior. For two, and maybe this is notable, is Ohtani does have a 15% walk rate, which is great for the runs scored, but it does kind of water down how much his 300 average helps you in 5x5. Whereas Bobby Witt has a 6.7% walk rate. So it's actually, you could call it a bad walk rate, but that's good for your batting average. And that's amazing when your batting average
343
is 346 or whatever it is. Yeah. So, and then you look at Witt and everything else has just, I mean, it's crazy. I don't think anybody would have bet that one of the three between Julio and Corbin Carroll would end up being like a net positive on the season.
Right. Yeah.
But the step forward that Witt has taken has been incredible. His plate discipline has gotten better in terms of the strikeout rate. His barrel rate has gone from being like, okay, it's solid. It's 11.5% up to a 14%. And even last year he hit 30 home runs. So he's at 2025. I mean, it's exactly what we were just talking about. The Xander Bogaerts, like you might've had Witt being a top 5 guy, but you didn't have it looking this way where he's got a 346 average as the best part about him. But the 25 steals are still great. the success rate on the base paths is a little interesting. Caught 10 times of the 35 attempts, but at least it's showing a willingness to run. And the 20 homers through 115 games pretty much confirms that this is like, I mean, you could say a 25 or 25-40 or a 30-30 guy is pretty much what we're looking at, that is now proving that he can hit 300 in his sleep. He's earning a high BABIP. All of the underlying metrics look like they're going in the right direction. And again, just 24 years old. And I think it's almost notable to say at shortstop, which is kind of a weakening position. Like I think it's now, you know, where Ohtani is a positional loss with util. I think shortstop is actually one these days that you're like, I need a plan for shortstop. And Witt is a phenomenal shortstop option here. So, yeah, I don't know if you got anything to add, but it just definitely feels like we're still continuing to see, you know, if you paired his 30-49 year last year with his 346 batting average this year, now you're starting to look at like kind of a, you know, all decade team season that you could secure. So, yeah, talk to me about Witt. You obviously are a fan at pick 2, and I think you liked him coming into this year too, Steve.
Yeah, after being very wrong on him heading into 2023. I think it's easy to forget like that this guy is so young and just like continuing to get better. There is improvement. Like, you know, I know you don't want to, I know there is a silver lining to like that low walk rate, like you said, but it is always nice to see plate discipline get better just because it means guys are swinging at better pitches and making better decisions. So to cut the strikeout rate by 2%, to improve the walk rate by a full percentage point, all while hitting for more power. You know, a lot of that stands out to me as far as the 343 average is the fact that he has a 374 BABIP after running 295 BABIPs the 2 years prior. He is obviously the fastest, like one of the fastest guys in the game, so I would expect it to be honestly closer to a higher end BABIP, but I think that's maybe around 330 rather than like the 374 that he's running this year. But I also think that, you know, for a 14% barrel rate, an 11.5% homer in the 5 ball rate is low. So maybe what he gives back in average, if it's just, you know, 300, which is obviously still elite, maybe there's closer to 30 to 35 homers, like, you know, a 14% barrel rate and a 50% hard hit rate, tells me that he could do that. I would expect some power growth in his game. Sure, yeah, the caught stealings are a little concerning. I think you brought it up too in the offseason, like he was caught 15 times to go with those 49 stolen bases. But I think he's as safe a bet for like a projectable 30-30 for as anyone. With a floor of a batting average of like 280 at like worst, right? Like that's like what happened in 2023. And you know, a guy that plays shortstop is on a team that's getting better. Yeah, I could see a very good argument for Witt number 1 as well.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, he did hit 254 in 2022, but the strikeout rate has gone the other direction, as have all the batted ball metrics. So yeah, I think you're right that there's a really nice batting average floor, and obviously we're seeing the ceiling is, I mean, it's batting title, right? Unless well, I guess Quan, but I mean that's pretty much what we're talking about. The field.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 2. So we got the same 1 and 2 just flip-flopped. So now we get to number 3, Steven, and why don't you rip the Band-Aid here, and I'll tell you if it's a match.
All right. I think we may have a match here. I think it would be interesting. We're on the same wavelength, but my number 3 is Aaron Judge.
It is Judge for me as well. There we go.
There you go. Another guy that I think that if you may look silly if you don't take him like with one of these picks, and not maybe honestly even with the first pick. His ADP this year sure does look silly compared to what he's doing. I know the injury risk is real, but I don't know. I think it's so easy to say that when you're in the middle of a season that only Barry Bonds can come close to, right? Like I saw a stat today that like through whatever 390 through 500 plate appearances, which is what Judge is at. He's at like 497. The only player to have, he's the first player to have a 700 slugs. It's Bonds in 2004. Like it's absolutely insane what he is able to do. He is just becoming like the best hitter that I've seen like since Bonds, honestly. It's just a matter of playing on the field. I think the upside is just so high that you can't take him any lower than 3. And honestly, like when he has a year like 2023 and only plays 106 games, like you should be salivating at the fact if he goes anywhere beyond like 5. Like it's just so good. Like I know there's the age and I'm not concerned with it's like a difference between like him and Trout at this point. Like they're actually really similar in age. Trout just turned 33. Judge is 32. That's crazy, by the way.
But what different directions they're going in terms of like the feeling of their, and it's
Trout's
health is a skill type of thing.
Knees and soft tissue. Like Judge had like, it was an ankle injury, right? Like, or like he broke his toe, like he ran into the fence. Like
that's true.
It was sort of a freak thing. I don't think we should have penalized him that much for last year. And like the game totals in 2021-22 were 148 and 157. Like, sure, in 2019 he missed time, but that was really the last major injury.
There was a calf strain in 2020, an oblique strain in 19, like a wrist fracture, and then the toe is. So he's had an oblique a couple times from like 16 to 19, but ever since then it really hasn't been like those soft tissue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Bobby Witt Jr. just hit his second homer of the night, so there you go.
Right on.
Yeah, like it seemed like he had to deal with that and had to figure out how to like, okay, like he's this big guy swinging hard. How do I manage my oblique? He's beyond that. Like that soft tissue thing is beyond that. A wrist injury and breaking your toe running into the wall or whatever it was, tearing a ligament running into the wall.
Because there was a minute where you were penalized for that. There was a minute where you were kind of like categorizing his over under on games played with like Yordan Alvarez, again, Trout, things like that. But I think he's at this point, he's got to be like a 135 over under.
If he stays healthy the rest of the year, which, knock on wood that he does, it's going to be 3 out of the 4 seasons where it's essentially a full year.
148 games.
148. Yeah. Like I count that. Like the 148, that sounds like maybe there was one IL, maybe one IL stint. But that's essentially these days with how many off days guys get. Like I'm not going to discount a guy for playing 14 less games than what's on the schedule.
No, yeah, none at all. Yeah, I love it with Judge, man. Like you said, just one of the best straight up hitters we've seen. And it's like you go to the power, everyone rightfully goes to the power, but man, just like the average boost that you get from him, it like now we're talking about 2 years ago,
24%
strike.
Yeah,
now it's
24% strikeout rate. Yeah.
324 this year. Like we're just seeing stuff that's like, it's what we'd expect with what we loved about like Freddie Freeman. You know what I mean? But Freeman, it was with 25 homers, and he was still a first.
It's Freddie Freeman with 60 homer power. Yeah,
right. So, Judge is incredible. I mean, the only note again, just because it's kind of on topic for some of these guys that are this good, is that Judge has the 18.5% walk rate. So I think it's like if you're in a points league, Judge almost goes to number 1. Because of what he's given you with walks and on a 5x5 league, some of that average, you're losing some of those plate appearances. But yeah, Steve, to your point, last year when he played 106 games, he was probably like a top 30 hitter, even with 106 games because he had the 37 homers. So anyway, that's Judge. Not much to add on that. Going to number 4, Steve, we talked about this, and I gotta say, I had you in mind when I was making this decision, but my number 4 is Mr. Gunnar Henderson. Is that a match?
No, it is not. I have
Oh,
Gunnar Henderson at 5.
you got Soto?
Let's talk about Gunnar
Okay,
first, and then we'll go to my guy.
we'll
Yeah.
talk about Gunnar. So Gunnar, I think what I like about what I like about Gunnar here is now you're starting to drop a tier in terms of what the power speed. Like Witt and Otani offer power speed at an A++ level, and then Judge is just an outlier because he's like triple plus power and average and the RBIs, but no speed. Now you're getting a just solid A grade power speed, where I think Gunnar, after last year with the 28 and 10, and then this year has just like completely reinvented like what his potential is. And I was the one guilty of this, where I was like, I feel like his ultimate ceiling is like 270 and 30 and 10. No, it's not. We're going to see him basically be 35-20 with a 290 average, and all the batted ball data is kind of backing it. Also, I think from the bat speed data that we've seen this year, Gunnar is one of my favorite ones in terms of like, oh, now it starts to make sense why he's so good, because his bat is so fast and his swing path is so short. I just think this dude is like the dictionary definition of a stud. What, like, he passes the eye test, and I don't know why necessarily you would think that he's going to like slow down on the base paths at all, just being 23. He's stolen 14 and been only caught twice. He's got 88th percentile sprint speed. Like, yeah, all signs are a go for Gunnar. And then, by the way, easily overlooked is the runs category. We talk about that all the time. He's sitting at 93 right now in 113 games. So we're gonna see him.
Yeah, he's gonna get like a 120, 125 type run.
Yeah,
season.
like that error that you see like Mookie Betts, or like on his best year, like a Bo Bichette. That's going to be Gunner's run total plus a 35-20 season and 290. So yeah, I just love everything going on with Gunnar. And another one here that is going to help you out at shortstop before there possibly is some position scarcity there. So that's my case for Gunnar. It was close. I definitely felt like from here on in, I was kind of wrestling.
Yeah,
there's some
names to consider at this point. But I echo what you said with Gunnar. It's a similar thing to Witt, like, right, just slow, steady improvement across the board, like improved strikeout rate, improved walk rate, improved hard hit rate, improved barrel rate. He cut his chase rate by 5%. He cut his swing strike rate by 2%. So like that backs up, like, honestly, even a lower K rate than what he has at a very manageable 23%. It's just a 9.8% swing strike rate. Like, yeah, I think this is another one that I think sort of the sky is the limit here. Like, I think that this could be like, the first rounder for just years and years to come. Like, Gunnar is never going to, unless there's like some massive, I don't know. I can't even think of the situation, but like, he's entrenched in like the top 7 now. Like, right. It's like when, like, it reminds me of like when Machado sort of broke out in Baltimore, right? Like, he then had a 5 to 8 year stint as like, a safe, kind of boring, but if you draft him in the first round with your 8th pick, like, you're gonna have a good shot to win your league. Like that. Yeah. That's what reminds me of Gunnar Henderson.
To add
totally
one more,
agree with him being. I mean, I only had him a slot off, but I could see him being that high for sure.
Okay, so you got him at 5. The one other thing I wanted to point out, just because it's like jaw dropping change, is in 2023, which was by and large a great year for Gunnar. He started real slow. If you remember, he was dropped in a lot of leagues. Then he picked it up in the second half. But in 2023, against breaking balls, he had a 237 batting average and a 479 slug. This year, a 333 batting average and a 786 slug against breaking balls. He's got 15 homers against breaking balls this year. Like, that's just, to me, the evolution of a hitter that, like, you never want to it always makes you nervous. I think like a Randy Arozarena, where you see a guy 90% of their success is coming off fastballs. It's like, all right, well, is the book coming out on them? The book was kind of out on Gunnar last year that he struggled with breaking balls. This year, it's been far and away the pitch type he's attacked the most. So like, yeah, I just think he's a total gamer. So that's Gunnar. We talked about him plenty. We're going to get to Steve's number 4 pick and see where we kind of did not match up here, but we're going to take our first ad break. We'll be right back after this. All right. So Steve, you're number 4. You already said you got Gunnar at 5, but who edged him out by 1 slot?
Real quick, just to go back to Gunnar, before just to spoil it, but since July 1 of last year, Gunner's hitting 280 with 46 homers, and a 891 OPS, 147 WRC plus, and that's 190 games. So like basically like the calendar year from when he, sort of really turned it around. All right, my number 4. I'm curious as to where you have him now, because I don't think you have him 5. But my number 4 is Ellie De La Cruz.
Okay, yeah. Now we're starting to get a little variation.
Yeah, I think we're starting to get a little variation.
I have Ellie at number 7. So
okay,
not way
too
far
far off. But yeah, I just think that this is there is like Ronald Acuna season potential for him, especially consider, you can sit here all day and gush about the 20 home runs and 58 steals, and like people that were taking him in the second round this year, like if you told them that's what they did, they would be like, see, I told you. But he has that through August 7th. So, it's easy to take that route. But I think what's interesting is the fact that he only has 50 RBIs. I think that the Reds will be better and should be better. He only, quote unquote, has 75 runs, but the fact that he's walking at 10% now, he did cut his strikeout rate by 3.5% down to 30%, and it's been much better. Like if you look at the rolling graphs we have at Pitcher List or on Fangraphs, like in the last 100 plate appearances, I saw a tweet that Ellie only has a 9% strikeout rate. So there is, some tangible proof and improvement. Like over the last 15 games rolling average, it's a 24% strikeout rate for Ellie. So there's some encouraging things other than the gaudy numbers that have me confident that it's not as boom or bust as people may put it out to be, just because he does hit the ball so hard. I think there's even more power potential, right? Like I think this could be sort of like, a Witt, Gunner 25 to 27 home run total, and then next year on August 1, like we could be sitting here talking about how Ellie's already in the 30-60 club on August 7th, 2025. Like that's what I think could be the case there. And there's a lot of there was a lot of pushback on whether he could hit or should hit lefty as a switch hitter. I know, like when the bat speed tool came out, there was a lot of questions about that, but he's hit as a lefty. He has a 91 WRC plus as a lefty, which isn't too bad. Sure, it's not the 156 and 949 OPS, but he is holding his own as a lefty, and does have a few homers left-handed too. He has 5 homers from the left side of the plate, or as a righty, versus lefties. So sorry if I said that wrong, but it was as a lefty or as a righty, is where he's weaker, but not as bad as I think would be. It's not stop switch hitting bad. So and it's shortstop too. I don't see. I'm definitely more of an upside guy, but I can't see passing on Ellie for any of these guys just because the floor sort of seems like what it is like now for a full season line, right? Maybe a little bit less batting average if he still does strike out 30% of the time, but we've seen steady improvement from him there.
Yeah, I can't argue. I mean, I think I had him at 70 or at 70 at seventh, and my write up was starting to kind of justify it, but now it's almost like I have to flip the debate because you got him at 4 and play devil's advocate. But I think to quickly hit on the positives, one, he's 22 years old. Like he's even younger
That's
than
also
these other
a good
guys.
point that I did not mention. Yeah.
He's just he's so young, and I think just in terms of like the game mentality of drafts, you're absolutely right that like he's got like his betting odds to finish 1 overall would be higher than a few of the guys we talked about.
Like
It's
like it could be all he would need is another like month like he had in May, in April or May, was it, when he was just absolutely insane. I
right.
think July too, right? If he has a 10 homer or what, maybe keep
Yeah,
more
eight
realistic,
homer
a 7
April.
homer,
Mhm.
15 steal month. This could seem light. Yeah.
You're right. And that's what like it's like something like that could put him into 30-70 territory, which was Acuna. So I love that anytime you got a guy who is almost intentionally putting up video game numbers, it's like a dream come true for your fantasy team. Like nothing's better than having those guys on your roster. Loved a lot of the stuff you pointed out, that the K rate, people will look at the 30, but that's actually getting better. And I think it will continue to. Again, 22 years old. Love that he's running, even getting caught. The 11 caught steals still tells me he's attempted almost 70 bases, which is amazing. But I think where I have him here, Steve, and it's kind of a difference in our own like brand of philosophy, but I think there's enough that 50 RBIs to me makes it seem like he is 4 category, which is like, okay,
I mean,
Gunner's probably 4.5 if you're calling his like 15-20 steals, but it goes back to the thing where like Judge has like triple plus power, Ellie has quadruple plus speed, and Gunner doesn't
RBIs are so circumstantial, I think, and it's just been a disaster of the year for the Reds. Their offense should be better when healthy next year. So I don't think that's any fault of his own, right? Especially now that he's batting 265, right? Like that's like that's better than any high-end projection for what people wanted when they were drafting Ellie in the second round this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I even though it's not the blame's not on him, part of me is just like, I guess maybe it's batting order and team context, but will that change next year? I don't know.
I think the team context will get better. I think so.
I hope. I mean, when you have a player like Ellie, you hope that people are, that teams are going for windows and everything. But I do think just if you were Vegas and said runs and RBIs for Gunner versus Ellie, you're probably looking at 195 versus 230 or something. So that's the gap for me. But I think
that's fair and something that you should consider. Yeah, it is one of the 5 categories, right?
But it is very, very intriguing, and maybe not a more fun pick. It would not. It's the type of pop in the draft rooms that you would not be surprised if he started scooting up toward like 3, 2, 1 territory, especially if he has
There's going to be a lot of Ellie FOMO next year for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, then where's that put us, Steve? I think we got to go to the 5th pick here and maybe speed up the pace slightly if we want a shot at getting through 12.
I'm good with that.
My number 5 is Juan Soto.
I have him at 8.
Okay, you got Soto at 8.
Yep.
So, yeah, this one to me, I think is just, again, looking at a guy that's kind of like Judge in terms of how good of a hitter he is.
Yep.
I think you're not getting the power of Judge, but I've always been one that's loved like the Freddie Freeman profile, which I think Soto is kind of this new prime Freddie Freeman, where he's not like a 40 homer guy, but you can almost like chalk up that he's going to be a huge plus in batting average. And I think we found that, Yankees Soto is a good Soto, even though it's kind of come a little bit in waves. Like I know, for the most part, we've seen Soto as like a 30 homer guy. And I think this year he'll be a 35 homer guy with New York. And this could have gone one of two ways. I think when you look at I know it's kind of the narrative, right? But it seems like Soto is loving his baseball there. And still you have to remind yourself that Soto is 25 years old. I think that, it's very possible that he is just a 35 to 40, 310 guy, extremely reliable in terms of showing up and being available. So yeah, I really like Soto here. I do think obviously the speed is what you're missing. And this is where the draft gets kind of interesting in that space. But looking at some of the counting stats as well, this is a guy that's sitting on 93 runs today. So he's another guy that will be, around a top 5 in the league when it comes to runs scored. And the RBI should be solid too. So love Soto, just kind of Mr. Reliable. Maybe you could, I'm open to you talking me out of him at 5, Steve, because I think there's less of a chance he'll finish 1 overall compared to a couple names still on the board. But yeah, I've got Soto at 5. I think I'd be super happy for him to be like a rock solid Freddie Freeman type.
I have him at 8, actually. The guys that I have in front of him just steal. So that was just a bit of a tiebreaker. Honestly, if he stays with the Yankees, which I think he will, I'd probably move him up my board. I think some of this is just, I know it's soft now, but I think it's a contract year thing. Like, this is going to be his biggest and potentially like the biggest payday ever. So maybe there is a little bit of regression back towards what he was, which was still amazing in 2022 and 2023. But he did, hit 242, which is crazy, that the fact that he actually hit 242 in 2022. Fun fact, that was the one year that I had Juan Soto shares. So congrats to me.
The barrel rate is interesting.
Yeah. It's 20%, which is just absolutely, I think that's a matter of like hitting in front of Judge, right? That's going to lead to that. The stadium is perfect for him. Like, I would be shocked if he doesn't go anywhere else, if he goes anywhere else other than the Yankees. But we'll see. I don't have many qualms. It just kind of was a tiebreaker for me just because of the steals. The fact that the other guys I have ahead of him, the 2 guys I have different at my 6 and 7 there, just can steal bases.
Finishing note on that, in 2021, 2022, and 2023, barrel rates all around 13, 12, 13, and now up to 20. So I think that's kind of like, pair it with the lefty pop at Yankee Stadium and a guy who's, entering his like power prime. Again, I just think
I think it's, I don't think you like, if I were to regress Soto's barrel rate, it would be to like 18. Right? Like, it's not crazy.
You still think this is pretty true, 35, 40. So, okay. Well, let's hear who you got at 5, Steve.
So 5, I had Gunner. So we can move on to 6 for me.
Okay.
And at 6, I have Jose Ramirez.
Okay, I have Ramirez at 8, but I like this. Okay, I like this argument.
So that's the flip flop there between Jose Ramirez and Soto. Jose Ramirez is incredible. He's a Hall of Famer in my mind. He is having his best year this year. He is going to probably pass his career high in steals. He's 4 away from that. The career high was last year at 28. There's a chance that he passes a career high in homers too. He has 39 in 2018. He had 28 already in 2024. The projections have him all at 9 or 10 homers the rest of the way. The bat has him at 11, so getting the 40. Yeah, I think Ramirez is just criminally underrated. Like, sure, it's not like the 900 OPS, but it's like high 800s. Pencil him in for 30 homers, pencil him in for 20 to 25 steals, and like set it and forget it. Third base, like another position that's tough. He is just amazing. What a career he has carved out, and it seems like he's in the prime of it.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to argue. Like he's one that truly is the boring one. Like if you covered his name and just showed the stats, how are you not lighting up at like everything you're looking at? Like you said, he's probably going to end up with something like a 40-30 type of season. And it's been just like the model of consistency when it comes to batting average and just flirting with like 25-30, however you slice it. It's been years and years of this. I think the only thing is like, truly, I think we've seen, I mean, I guess this year is a peak. So I guess that's hard to say, but it's kind of back to that theory of like, will Jose Ramirez finish one overall? Probably not.
No, but you don't need that person to have a good team, right? Like,
no. You're right. It's just that to me is, I think the ceiling is there. And I think there's been a little bit of like, what version, where it's like, is it like this year? I just want to make sure we're not drafting him at this year's clip because we felt like we knew he was a 25.
And 2023 was a little bit. Yeah, 2023 was a little bit ho-hum. Like I think Ramirez fell to like the back end of the first round this year. It was 24 homers, 28 steals, and 830 OPS last year. So honestly, but looking at his seasons since 2017, like that's sort of the outlier. The only year that was worse was 2019, which is when I think he had like, it was one of it was either the first half or the second half that he was just, I think it was the first half in 2019. He was like, he like so barely had a homer, and then he hit like 20 homers in August and September, and like saved the season. So that was just a strange one altogether. But I think he's just underappreciated, man, and he's like a all categories stud. Like, sure, maybe the runs and RBIs might be a little light from time to time if the Guardians aren't as good as they are this year, but he's already got 84 runs and 94 RBIs this year. That is nuts.
They've been better for sure. Enough said on Ramirez. I think a note, it'll be age 32 season, but I agree, Steve. He is just like charging toward Cooperstown and happy about it. He's been a delight in the fantasy
landscape. He's going to have one of those careers. Like he has 245 career home runs, 226 steals, and 279 career average with the 856 OPS. Like, it's one of those tweets. It's like, and here's Jose Ramirez career numbers. Like, here's the guys that have him. It's like, endless. Like, it's like 4 guys that are all first ballot Hall of Famers. Like, that's how good Jose Ramirez is.
Yeah. No, I love that, and he's at 8 for me. So I guess I had Elliott 7. So I'm about to throw out my number 6. Have you said your 6 yet?
J-Ram was my 6. J-Ram was my 6.
Okay, so this is my 6. All right, here's where I think maybe this is a leap here without knowing what everybody's doing. Sure. I've got Ronald Acuna Jr.
Wow.
At 6 here. And I think, we obviously, he's expected to be back for the 2020 start of 2025.
Opening day. Yep.
So that is the first big context. The second big context is in 49 games this year, he had 4 home runs. So people who rostered him, who thought they were going to get this 40-70 guy.
Pre-injury, it was tough. Yes.
Pre-injury, it was tough. This is kind of blind faith in another Cooperstown type of guy. And it is tough, man. I mean, at 2 ACLs, like I'm in Derrick Rose country here. And I know that like that's a tough second injury. So
we remember him coming back from the first ACL injury in 2022. That was a little different because the surgery happened around August, right? This injury occurred.
He missed a month.
June? He did miss a month and didn't really look right the whole season, at least power wise. He had
Right. That
15
was the
homers and 119
mhm.
games in 2022. The steals were 29 and
Steals were
119.
yeah, it was like he was trying to prove a point with the steals.
Yeah.
Where I'm at is I think this has to be kind of a wake up call for Acuna in terms of he's another guy just 26 years old. Like he's
Mhm.
got to figure out how to have a Hall of Fame career in terms of longevity. And I think once he decides that he is, a power hitter, changes, figures out what his swing is, we've seen him on multiple occasions prove that he can be one of the better like sluggers in the league with 240 homer seasons, and in the shortened 2020 year had 40 or I'm sorry, 14 and 46 games. So I think Acuna has always been a true 40 homer guy when
Yeah, he
he
had 24 in the 82 games that he played in 2021 before getting hurt.
yeah. And so injury scare for sure, but it's I think it's the bet that this guy again could be um so good that you see him be like a top 3 fantasy guy, even if that only comes with 5 steals, 10 steals. But it's a risky one. I'm curious if he's even in your first round.
He is my number 10, so he is in my first round.
Okay, I
So
feel better
there
about
you
it
go.
already.
Yeah, I'm glad you do. Yeah, I think to sort of just go back to some of the concerns to raise those a little bit more. He did strike out 24% of the time in the 50 games that he played. A big shock to his improvement last year was that he only struck out 11.4%. I'm sure we were expecting some regression there, but and maybe this is due to a small sample size and it would have normalized a little bit, but to essentially double his strikeout rate was a little
Mhm.
bit concerning. It's still like it wasn't bad. It just
Mhm.
wasn't like, elite like it was. And, he had like it was a Jose Ramirez esque plate discipline with 11% walk rate and 11% strikeout rate. Um, in 2023 for Acuna to go with the 41 homers and the 70 steals or 73 steals. I think Acuna is sort of one of those guys that comes out with a chip on his shoulder and like,
Totally.
look
Totally.
what happened but he needs to be right. He was right in 2023. He had that chip on his shoulder and, ran every time he was on first and hit 40 homers and was going for those numbers. Like he wants to get back to those numbers. That's the type of player that he is. And like you said with Ellie, like that's why I love those kind of players so much and why they're so good for
Yeah.
fantasy because they do care about those things.
Oh
And
yeah.
Acuna definitely does.
He doesn't
Um,
he wants to be better than Otani, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, in terms
yeah,
of and he believes he is. That's, like,
yes,
one of the things I
yes,
love
and he
about
and he
him.
could
Yeah.
be, and he could be. Um, I think it would be foolish to let Acuna slip out of the first round. That's why I had him in my 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That said, I
but
mean,
yeah,
you're I think looking at this, me having him ahead
the
of
the next few
Ramirez is
guys,
one thing, but, having
yeah,
him ahead of Ellie is really tough because I think the very
yes,
likely outcome of Ellie, the more we talk about it, is what you could put that on Acuna's season and you'd be like,
hmm
"Boom. I told you he was going to have a monster year." You know
hmm
what I mean? And
yeah,
it's like, no, Ellie will go 250 to 270 average, 20 to 25 homers and 40 to 80 steals. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's like
yeah, yeah,
you cannot put those sliders on Acuna. You don't even know if he's going to be healthy. So
yeah.
I definitely got to reverse those two. But yeah, Ramirez, I think it is a little bit chalkier. I think Acuna, we could see 330 with 40 homers if everything breaks right. I would not
Acuna
be
is the
shocked.
classic guy who would jump up like past like my J Ram and the next two guys that I'm going to say, or I had Soto at
Yeah,
8, but
yeah.
the next two guys in between them.
Yep.
So
Well,
we're
let's
on what?
let's get
Yep.
to. So I'm at set. I've done up until 8, and have
I
you
I
done
need to
up
give
through
my
8?
7. I need to give
Oh,
my
you got to
7.
give 7, and we'll get to that. But we got to
Yeah.
take our second ad break, and we'll be right back after this. All right. So Steve, we've taken our medicine. Let's hear your number 7, and then we've
Here's
got
a
kind of the final third.
here's a guy who I'm interested if you have him or where you have him on in your first round. Um, but I have Kyle Tucker at 7 for me.
I got Tucker at 9,
There you
Mr.
go.
Reliable, Mr.
Yep.
Reliable.
And I know that there's been this freak injury, and it was a bruise, and it was like, is he even going on the IL when it first happened?
On the
It's going to be one of
shin.
those
Yeah.
things that's like, yeah, it was broken or whatever, whenever they announce it. But I think it's easy to forget how good Kyle Tucker was, and like he was like the number, like pacing to be a top 3 fantasy player in the 60 games that he played so far, and he's going to come back and improve on that. But 19 homers in the 60 games he played. 10 steals, wasn't caught stealing, a 979 OPS, 172 WRC plus, 18% walk rate. Like that was the best of his career. The strikeout rate right in line with his career, under 16%. Like just doing everything. Like Kyle Tucker was on an amazing pace, on pace to set his, have them more than his career high in homers. He's hit 30 twice. He was due to blow by that with the 19 and 60 games, right? He was not, he didn't even play half the season and was already, on pace. That's like that's like a 40 homer pace almost at that point, right? Then probably even more because that's like a 45 homer pace, because 20 and 81 games would have been a 40 homer pace for him. So I just think it's easy to forget how good Kyle Tucker was for those few months and how good he's been consistently the last 3 years. So if he taps into that ceiling as he enters his prime, in his age 27, 28, 29 seasons, like this is another guy that next year is going to be a contract year too for him. Like Tucker's going to have a monster year, I think, next year.
Yeah. I one thing I really like, I mean, you're spot on. It feels like him and J Ram have been like steady Eddie, like somewhere between 6 and 10 for 4 years running. One thing I really like about Tucker is where it felt like the metronome in terms of his prototype. We did see a tweak this year, and it was a good tweak. I think we would all take it, where he was trading off average a little bit for launch angle. And like it's the first time in a while you've seen his average go down. It's also the first time in a while you've seen the launch angle go up like drastically. So I think that just feels like an approach change there. And like you said, Steve, if Kyle Tucker is now like a 45 homer guy with a 265, 270, and he's still getting 20 steals, like now that's starting to feel like Ohtani a couple years back. You know what I mean? And that could get him into the top 5.
It was a 245 BABIP, and I know that's small sample, and there's a lot of home runs, so that doesn't come. The home runs and a ball in play, so that doesn't take into it. And when you hit more fly balls, your BABIP goes down, and it is a 20% homer to fly ball rate. But I think I would normalize those two numbers, and I think Tucker could reasonably have a 15 to 17% homer to fly ball rate, a 280 to 290 BABIP like he's had for his career. He's always just been a lower BABIP guy for whatever reason. But if you do that, that's like 275 with like 35 homers, 30 steals, and amazing counting stats, and a very, very good first rounder.
Well, and I think sometimes when we say traded average for power, like the story you tell in your head is that they were swinging more aggressively and kind of wildly and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, the opposite for Tucker, where you look at like his first pitch swing rate is down 11%.
His chase rate was
11.
Chase rate went from 26% to 19% this year.
So
he was doing that
very selective, very selective. But when he found his pitch, he was trying to like golf swing, and it seems like given the launch angle, the fly ball, and everything.
7.2% swing strike rate. Like, this is like if you build a baseball player in a lab, like Kyle Tucker, comes out.
Yep, lefty. And another one that, again, it's like we've known the name for so long that you lump him in with like Jose Ramirez. Ramirez, 32 years old next year. Kyle Tucker will be age 28 season. So I think we're still very much going to see. I don't think we've seen Tucker's career year yet, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and maybe that's a reconsider for me to flip flop Tucker and J Ram from 6 to 7 for now. But third base too is a big deal.
That's true.
As well.
That's true.
But hey, you do want outfielders, right?
You do. You got to fill them up. Yep. So I had Tucker at 9. Do you have anything you got to hit on before 9?
I had Soto at 8. We talked about him. So I'm up to 9. You had Tucker at 9. At 9, another guy that I'm curious if he made your list. Another guy that's been injured, so maybe a bit forgotten, but that's Mookie Betts.
I have Mookie at
Betts
10,
9.
Steve. I
Okay,
got
nice.
Mookie at 10. So we're
So
all
let's talk about him. I'll let you kick off Mookie since I gave the spiel about Kyle
yeah.
Tucker there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mookie was a home league guy for me, so this one is near and dear. For those who didn't follow as closely this year, if you remember the first couple weeks, he was,
Yeah.
or even honestly, the first like 4 weeks, he was just chalked #1 ranked in all of fantasy. He had 4 homers in March, which you got to think there's like a
It was
handful of games in March.
Well, he
Yeah,
did play in the Korea series, right?
he did, but yeah, you're
Yeah.
still looking at just like a handful of games. And then he still was just hitting the ball nonstop, massive like hit streaks, all that. But the power did kind of dry up to where after the 4 homers in March, he was just getting 2 homers per month. Suddenly you look up and a guy who I thought, I mean, I had like a futures bet on him breaking 32 homers. That didn't work with the injury stuff, but it looked like it was easily going to be a 35, 40 homer season for Betts coming off of last year when he had 39. And then 72 games, he's only got 10. So really he was pacing more like a 25 homer guy. Now the steals were at 9. So it was looking like just a really good 2020, 25, 20, something like that pace. And then
I would think
in,
with
of
the way
course,
offenses, sorry to interrupt, but the way
you're right.
offenses heated up, it's a shame that he didn't, get the July and August sort of
Bump.
home run
You're right.
swoon, right? I'd imagine he would pick up the pace and at least pace for 30 to 35
I think that's
like
fair.
he has the last few years. Yeah.
I think that's fair. So like 30, 15, 30, 20, that type of a season. And then the second year in a row where we've seen a 300 average, same age as Jose Ramirez, again, for context. So definitely not looking aside from just, getting an injury. What we've seen with Mookie has been like he's inhuman. The fact that he can just pick up shortstop, pick up any position on the field. And it was a hand fracture. Again, it's not like it was an oblique strain or anything like soft tissue. So love Mookie. The 6% barrel rate is concerning. I will say that, but
he's never been a barrel rate guy though, other than last year
that's
when
fair.
he had the 12%. Like it's always been 7.7, 9.7. Just because he does put so many balls in play, and that hasn't been an issue for him to get to the 25 to 30 homer mark. I don't think. What is interesting though, he's in NFBC at least. He's probably going to lose outfield eligibility next year. He has 65 games at shortstop, 16 at second. I want to see where he's.
So Mookie's coming back and playing short next week. So he will be back
he's
from
going to play
IL.
short.
So we're going to play short. Yeah, he's going to play short, and we're going to see
because I think
again
they did get
power.
Rosario right. And I know the shortstop defense hasn't been great. He's played it. It's been fine, which is absolutely amazing that he can even do that, right? But I think they do like for the I think they do want to get him over to second, maybe even play him in some outfield. Like his outs above average is -4 this year, whereas last year, wow, it was actually -4 too. And 2022 was +4. So interesting there. But it hasn't been great. So I would be, he's at 65 games at shortstop, so 100% has that for NSBC. 16 for second base. I think you need 20, so you'll probably get there. And unless they switch him full time to the outfield when he's back, he's going to lose that outfield eligibility. But hey, I mean, still both more. We're picking the nittiest of nits here when it comes to Mookie Betts.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, 10% strikeout rate of every name we've mentioned so far. He strikes out the least, which is what's amazing about Mookie. So I mean, just rock solid and a great way to start your outfield for power, speed, and another guy that you got to say, if it all clicked for Mookie, he could flirt with like a top 2, top 3 in terms of power, speed, average if it all worked right.
I mean, that's what he did last year, right? And that's where he went this year, right? Top like
Well,
five.
and honestly, last year just the 14 steals. This year he was pacing for the most steals he's had
Yeah.
since 2018. So 9 steals in 72 games this year. I don't think we can ignore the fact that Mookie was on pace for a 20 steal season, which would have been again the first time he's done that since 2018 when he had 30. So yeah, that would be huge to see. I think let's see what he does because he's coming back next week. He's a really interesting one to see what he does on the last 7 weeks of the season. Because if he kind of stays quiet, right, then I think this is where he's going to be like back end of the first round, early second. But if he goes kind of off, like you're saying, Steve, and takes advantage of like the power environment, looks good, even though he had the fracture and everything, then I think I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps up 3 slots to like middle of the first round. But
yeah,
that's Mookie. Yep. I had him at 10. You had him at 9.
I had
so
Acuna
I think we're
at 10.
up to you. You had Acuna at 10. So
So
11. We got a
11.
chance at the same here. I'll start us off and say Vlad.
Ooh, he is on my honorable mention list, but
Okay,
I'll let you talk, Vlad.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for the single best fantasy player in the past month, and as Steve Gisuele mentioned, that is Vlad. Pretty much since you pushed it big time on the podcast, we've seen him go nuts. In July, had an 11-12 OPS. Finally, the power has woken up. So June and July had 16 homers to completely right the ship. And you throw that in with a guy who hits the ball as hard as anybody, another guy who, similar to what we were talking about with Judge, the batting average can be Freddie Freeman-esque. That's where we're at this year with the 317. We've just been waiting so long for Vlad to prove out that he's not like a third round guy and he's just 25 years old. I'm a sucker for Vlad, man. I believe it's also a contract year next year because I think he's a free agent in 2026.
It is. And
so maybe
like
we're going to
trade
see
rumors. Yeah.
We might see the very best of Vlad. And also the question to me just becomes, has he tapped into something? You know what I mean? Because for a long time, it was like we weren't seeing homer binges the way we're seeing it right now. And now that we're seeing it, like, don't forget he had 48 in 2021.
Yeah,
and then it's been a long time since we've seen anything like that.
Yeah, that was Dunedin and Buffalo. So I don't know if we'll ever see that again. And there's still a lot of ground balls, right? It was a 45% ground ball rate in 2021, 49% this year. But and the pull rate's still not like ideal. But he's going center and oppo. He's going oppo. Not a crazy amount either, but he is absolutely demolishing the ball, and the barrel rate is back up to like where it's really good. It's never been bad. Like it's always been 11%. But I think last year was just kind of why I liked Vlad, right? It was a 14.5% homer on the fly ball when his career was 18%. It's back up to 19%. So what do you know? He's back on like, the 32 to 35 homer pace, right? And just the way that he's hitting the ball, it comes with a 317 average. So there you go. It came down for me not including him and just having him as an honorable mention just because of steals, right? Like honestly though, like you want to solve first base. So I could see taking Vlad, and I don't know who is the first baseman off the board next year if it's not Vlad.
Oh man,
pull that up right now.
I mean,
by the player rater on Fangraphs, he is the number one.
Walker's had a pretty good year up until the injury, but
Harper, I guess, could be the other guy that you would take.
Okay.
Take one. Vlad or Harper for 2025. Obviously, for you,
to me, it's Vlad.
Vlad.
So if you remove Dunedin, he has never had 16 homers in 2 months, and that's kind of my point. Is like,
that's what he's had. That's what he's had.
Yeah, in June and July, he's had 16 home runs in 2 months. So my question is not, will I take this version of Vlad's baseball card?
Uh-huh.
My argument here is, remember when we thought Vlad was generational, that like he was going to like break baseball
Yes.
with all of the like power and
Yes.
placata and all that. Like, I'm just wondering, like, are we
Yeah.
seeing a 25-year-old
The
break out?
Vlad, the Freddie Freeman with 40 homer power consistently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like locked 40 homer power. Cause he's not on. I mean, I know it's 2 months. You're literally cherry picking the best sample size.
Yeah.
But he's.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. Like the hate went so far on Vlad. Like I don't want to call it like, but there was like a Twitter and it's like a Twitter account that does like dynasty ranks. I don't have it offhand, but like in April, like the number one dynasty first baseman was Josh Naylor. Now in August, your number one dynasty first baseman, I think they had Harper and then Vlad. And Vlad in April was like the 12th dynasty first baseman. If your dynasty lists change that much in 4 months, you shouldn't be doing dynasty lists. That defeats the purpose of a dynasty list. Like you need to look at much bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, Vlad, even through those down years, really shouldn't have changed much from like maybe like 1 to 3. Right. And now there's an argument to have him 1 again. Like, in dynasty, like, yeah, I want Vlad over Harper for sure, just based on the age, right?
So, and just to try to, it's a great point on the dynasty thing that the hate's gone too far. Just real quick to play the game, looking at his rolling charts on power, for the season average has been 118, but in like from July 1st to August 1st on the rolling chart, it has been, I'm going to call it like 130. So who's like an absolute slugger we should pull up power wise? Maybe like Judge.
Yeah. I mean,
I just want to see like how, for what we're seeing of him. Okay. So Judge's season average this year is
that's not fair. Okay. Who do we think of as like a quintessential power hitter? I don't know. Pete Alonso.
So Alonso season average is 110, and his watermark, like high point this year, has been like 125. So we're seeing, a better,
and it's a down,
better version.
It's probably not a
fair, you know what I want to do? I want to do Ohtani real quick.
Okay, there you go.
Because Ohtani's like not Judge, but okay. So Ohtani's season average is 150. And we said Vlad was what, 135 over the past month. So that's just to put it into perspective. So if Ohtani is like a 45, 50 homer guy, I think basically that's what we're saying is Freddie Freeman with 40 homers. That's fair. That's fair.
And just to put things into context, his OPS plus, so like his OPS relative to the league, in 2021, his OPS plus when he had those 48 homers and a 601 slug, with a 1002 OPS, Vlad's OPS plus was 167. So like based on the league, he was 67% better than average. This year, his OPS plus is 161. So
wow,
6 points off of that. Sure, the homer totals aren't gaudy, but he does have 29 doubles. He had 29 doubles in 2021. I could see him finishing like. Is it out of the question if Vlad, like, how he would have to go absolutely insane? But I guess it's now the August 7th. But if he hit 40 home runs, that would be absolutely nuts. But I think 35 is not out of the question. That's 13 more homers the rest of the way.
No, I mean, not the way he's hit, like his game log. It seems like every other night type of thing. So we'll stay tuned on Vlad. But I got him at 11. Steve, let's hear who you got.
At number 11, I'm curious if he's major honorable mentions or you're on the list, but I'm trying not to be too recency biased here. But at number 11, I have Julio Rodriguez.
Okay, I looked at him, but I don't have him. I did go pitcher on 12. I think we both did.
Yes, and I think our pitcher's going to be the same. Yeah, I know it's been tough, and I know it's pretty brutal to look at an OPS of 687 and an WRC plus of 100, but I think that there's still a lot to like under the hood with Julio Rodriguez. The barrel rate and hard hit rate have fallen off, but they're not like, what's going on here. It went from 52% hard hit rate to 48% this year, a 12% barrel rate to 10% this year. So nothing too crazy. The O swing, the contact percentage are basically in line. A little bit more strikeouts, a little less walks. It just seems like something's been off for him all year. And who knows, had he stayed healthy, he was just heating up too. We saw what Julio did last August and September to basically, go on fire and cement himself as like an arguable number 2 overall pick. I'm basically betting on a Julio Rodriguez bounce back. Like, if this is a floor 263 with 11 homers and 18 steals in 100 games, if that was a 15 homer, 30 steal, 20 homer, 30 steal, 260 season, like, you could live with that. But I think that, Julio's still just 23 years old. I think it would be silly to count him out, and I would still want Julio with a back end first overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from now till March, I think there's every chance Julio just kind of establishes himself somewhere a little bit higher. I think it's like,
you think really? I think it might be the opposite.
Just
like,
because,
especially if his September and October aren't great.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is, how often do you have like a super like sexy pick at the back end of the first round of a guy that could like theoretically be, 1-1 overall? And it's like, I just feel like with Julio, I mean, of course, it'll all come down to what happens August, September. But for a guy that's 23 years old, it, like, as ugly as it's still been 11 homers, 18 steals, and 263. Like, it's not dismal. You know what I mean? So if that's the floor, like, we're not talking about like Corbin Carroll levels of struggle from early on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like last year was the only year. Like, he was so good in 2022 as well. And he's still just 23 years old. Like, I think it's fair. Like, I don't know that, I think it'll be really interesting to see Mookie versus Julio the rest of the way, because I could see a lot of draft rooms chasing, if you don't have an early pick, sometimes it's hard to lay off of those guys like Tatis was this year.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, even though they come with a lot of questions, you're looking to catch lightning in a bottle. And I think that it's a very like logical argument for Julio. Definitely. Even with some of the, the K rate and stuff like that. So I think it's good, Steve. When is he actually back? He's getting ready to be activated, right?
Yeah, like he's picking up baseball activity. Should go on a rehab and then back hopefully by the end of the month. Yeah.
Oh, so it's not until September. I thought it was.
Yeah, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks away potentially.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit conservative. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, high ankle sprain, should be back in August. So
yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. And now,
who's your number one pitcher? I know we wanted to have a pitcher on the board. Wait. So let's recap my 1 through 11. Ohtani, and we kind of both put a pitcher 12 just because we normally don't take a pitcher in the first round, but we made it, so we had to discuss one. I have Ohtani, Witt, Judge, Ellie, Gunnar, J-Ram, Tucker, Soto, Betts, Acuna, Julio, 1 through 11. Those are the hitters that I talked about.
That's a great list. Yep, mine all similar names, but Witt, Ohtani, Judge number 3, Gunnar, Soto a little bit earlier, Acuna at 6, Ellie at 7, but I think I could see Acuna, Ellie flipping there. J-Ram at 8, Steady Eddie, with Tucker at 9, Steady Eddie, then Mookie and Vlad, and then rounding out for me is SP1. It is actually Tarek Skubal.
Same here.
Okay, I didn't know if you're going to go Skeens, but I think with the volume,
dude.
You know,
I wish had you. I may have done that. I wish for maybe just the pop, and who knows? I'll probably
uh-huh.
do that towards the end of the year anyway.
I could
As we
see
end
it.
the
I
draft
could see it.
season, I can't help myself. But yeah, I guess basically it's sort of like the SP1 for next year is sort of like a mantle, right? Like you earn it, and like Scooble sort of earned it, in my opinion. I wouldn't take a
Mhm.
picture anyway, so I maybe I just should have done it just for you know, the excitement factor there. But Scooble's deserving of it. And I think he'll
Deserving.
be
Yeah.
I think he'll be the first pitcher off the board next year.
Well, and hats off to him because, like, for all, I've been a broken record saying, like, the theme of the season for me is like extension guys, and
Hmm.
Scooble is not like a pounce on you extension guy. Like, he's got to get every ounce of that 97-mile-per-hour fastball, but he does it. It's a great fastball.
Hmm.
The changeup has got to be one of the best, like, metrics
Yeah.
wise in the league in terms of like swing and miss stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, you're just not looking at um, any other pitchers who have 164 strikeouts at this time of year and a 2.5 ERA.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great repertoire. We talked about him in the offseason. I'm sad I missed out on Scooble. Steve, I think you were a little bit more in on him than I was. I had my doubts just because it just felt like it was only 80 innings and how much are we going to see of him and everything. But yeah, a guy who, again, just 27 years old, the arrow's pointing up just for Cy Young type
Yeah.
of stuff. But yeah, I won't be
Yeah.
drafting an
Yeah.
SP in round one.
I agree. Do you have like a considered list, or no? You want to go through real quick?
I did not do an honorable mention, but I want
right.
to hear yours because I'm sure there's some good ones there.
Guys I considered: Fernando Tatis Jr., Yordan Alvarez, Bryce
Mhm.
Harper, Trey Turner, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Francisco Lindor. Those
Yeah.
are names that I wanted to get in there and would be happy taking it like the 1-2 turn at like 13, 14, or 14, 15, 16, whatever it is.
Those
In deeper
those are
leagues.
good
Yeah.
ones. I would add Skeens onto that with his
Yeah, there you go. For sure.
199
Definitely.
ERA. Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, that is a hell of a show, Steve. It's
Yeah.
we knew it'd be
Longer one
fun.
with fun, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like you blink and you're in an hour 20 because this
Mhm.
is as fun as it gets talking about these guys. But thank you guys for tuning in. Steve and I will both be out next Thursday. It is our first show that in a while that either one of us has missed, but our first show ever, Steve, that both of us have missed just because the vacations lined up like that. But luckily it's mid-August. So I think, in terms of baseball activities, of course, there's waiver wire scrambling that all you guys will be doing as we close in on playoffs. When we come back, we will shift back into kind of, I don't want to say desperation mode, but definitely some actionable advice for the rest of the way. But this was a blast, Steve. Closing thoughts from your end.
No, great show. Glad we did it. It's fun to talk about this and have sort of an unbiased look ahead. It's always fun to look ahead. Glad we did a show to do it.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, behalf of Steve, episode 151. Thanks for talking baseball with us, guys.
Thanks for listening, guys. Later.
All right.